We should totally be meditating now.
Come on, Haley, give us some air guitar.
Like the breaking news.
When a soul is under fire, when the world's being torn apart, keep to the start of eternal desire, and mend all the broken heart. Feel as one who's young alone and always stays strong in the hands of a broken one, passionate, crying mind. It'll get the change sides reversed to a different time. We'll make it through. We never do it alone. There's always someone who will make it through. We know it'll be alone. So keep to the rest of my cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Never giving up the long stretch of fire. Cause everything is gonna be alright. Knowing someone there holding you tight, I say yeah. Like these strings of arrest, failing the contest, turns to eternal rest, internal debate to relate to serenity state, battle to manipulate, trapped beneath yours is caused by wandering lost. One quick way to end it all, finding my way back, attack the path that stains black, and be able to light it from and never do it alone. There's always someone who will make it through. We know we'll be alone. So here's to the rest of my cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Never giving up the long stretch of fire. Cause everything is gonna be alright. Knowing someone there holding you tight, I say yeah. Logic in them, they still fighting. Depression inside, feasting. Extreme measures lie awaiting. But we'll make it through and never do it alone. There's always someone, but we'll make it through. We know it'll be alone. So here's to the rest of my cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Never giving up the long stretch of fire. Cause everything is gonna be alright. Knowing someone there pulling you tight.
Welcome to Network Roundtable. This week, our plus one superhero is Mark Traphagen, and joining him as our plus one sidekick is Eli Fennell, and we are talking all about open-mindedness.
I remember visiting my grandfather's farm in Alberta, Canada. All around the farm, they had hand pumps installed to provide water to the sheep, clean, and any number of other tasks this city slicker did not understand. I still remember the first time I tried to get water from that hand pump. I took a few pumps on the handle and nothing happened. My grandfather came over and patiently showed me how it would take a bit more work to prime the pump. As a small boy, that was a lot of work. Once the pipe was full and the pump was primed, it became easy to keep the water flowing. I stopped pumping and went to get my dad to show him what I had learned. When we got back to the pump, the pipe was cleared and I had to prime it all over again. Team Troopers hopes that the things you learn today will prime your pump. It's up to you to keep the inspiration flowing.
All right, welcome to another week of Network Roundtable. I am super excited. In fact, everyone on this panel, we have been talking for hours about how excited we are about this. And so we're going to get right to it. One of the first things we do each week on Network Roundtable is we do the introductions. Though, Mark and Eli, we do these a little differently as we do everything on Network Roundtable. So here's how it works. We call this Super Sidekick Admiration and Sidekick Super Admiration. And what's going to happen here is, first, Eli is going to tell us about Mark and why he's so awesome. And then Mark's going to tell us about Eli and why he's so awesome. So you guys are going to do the introductions because, quite honestly, you know each other the best. So, Eli, take it away.
Okay, well, Mark Traphagen. Well, the story about how Mark and I first started to connect with each other was that it happened when Google unveiled their new personalization for search, which, you know, was pretty Google Plus heavy at the time. And Twitter and Facebook, they got all up in a flurry about it, and we had both sort of left comments on the same article where we were like, oh, poor Twitter, you know. And then I posted something, and he posted something, and what he posted mentioned me, and I was like, oh, that's that guy. I'd already kind of been following him, but didn't really know who he was at the time, other than a guy who just shared a lot of interesting tips about Google+. And since then, I gotten to know him quite a bit better, I think, as both a businessman and as a person. I know him to be very honest and impeccable, you know, as a business person. He believes in, you know, what he is saying. He's not one of those shysters out there that's going to sell you a quick system. You know, he's going to give you real value. If you work with him, he's going to give you the best advice that he knows, and if he finds out any better, he's going to let you know that he's found out better, and not just, you know, pocket your money and run and go, haha, sucker, good luck to the next guy who comes along to fix the problem I created. I know him also to be somebody who, you know, he shows a lot of his human side, you know, online when you follow him, which, you know, to me, you know, that made me more interested in following him and then getting to know more about him, because, you know, he wasn't just sort of a pressed suit on a coat rack with a tape recorder full of talking points. You know, his personality came through, his contradictions, the things that he liked, the things that he disliked, and sometimes even the things that just boiled his blood. All of which, you know, just made me more interested in him. And, you know, this, I think, is the kind of thing that's going to go along with what we'll discuss more. So, we found ourselves a lot of the time agreeing and having similar, not always the same, but usually complementary viewpoints on things. He, I think, always understood more the business side of things than I did, and I tend to be more of the tech savant, so sometimes I knew how to break things down to the technical perspective of things. And so sometimes it's like you could put our two contributions to a single idea together and come out with something even bigger. And every time that we would be posting things, writing about stuff, or commenting on the same stuff, and finding those complements in our ideas, I think for each of us it led to more ideas. And one of the greatest things that Mark Traphagen has given me over these last 3 years of knowing him has been one great thing to think about after another that has really made me pause and go, that's something that I might really need to consider incorporating, or taking a spin of my own on, because this man knows what he's talking about, and if he doesn't, then he's also going to tell you that he doesn't, and give him time and he will. So he's also just a very charming and intelligent person, and I've been in a lot of hangouts with him. I have yet to meet him in person, but I feel in many ways like I have, because I've done public hangouts and private hangouts with him, and so I feel, I consider him more than just an online acquaintance. At this point, I consider him to be a friend, and I'm very honored to be his friend. So there you go.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And now you see why it is we don't do the intros, because they're so much better coming from you guys. Mark.
Well, first of all, I really, really want to meet that person that Eli just described. So, Eli, if you could drop the contact information to me after the show, I'd love to meet that person. He sounds incredible. Also, my second comment on Eli's introduction is that my one and only suit is in that closet right behind me, and it is badly in need of pressing. So, there's that. Oh man, Eli. Yeah, he did such a good job of describing how we met and how we came about that I don't need to go through that. But why one of the cool things about this show is, and the way you've set it up, is you get a person that you as your main target for whatever the topic you're talking about, and then you ask them to nominate their own sidekick, and that was such a joy. To choose Eli, and even bigger joy for him to say yes. I think that, when I think about Eli, I think back as the father of two girls, I can get away with saying the next thing without losing any man cred. And that was that I have read all the way through aloud the Anne of Green Gables series, probably more than once. And I got a little cheer from Kristen there, I see. And one of the key phrases from that that Anne talks about in one of her key values is the kindred spirit. She's always seeking out those people who are her kindred spirit. And I think from our earliest conversations, that's what I felt with Eli. I felt, this is a kindred spirit. And kindred spirit doesn't mean that you agree on everything and you see everything the same way. Eli used that term earlier of complement. Being complementary, and that's with the complementary with an E, not an I. And that word really means it means that there's a symbiosis, there's a connection, but it doesn't mean. It also means that there are interesting contrasts. So when I think when two people are kindred spirits or complementary, they are like a Venn diagram, and in my case, I think we overlap to a large extent. We have those interesting outside edges of that Venn diagram where we are different. We see things differently, or we have a different approach. So Eli has been incredibly valuable to me. First of all, somebody who is also very charming and just fun to talk with. Very quickly, I think, especially due to the magic of Hangouts, even though we've never physically been together, I think we very quickly felt that we were friends, and always enjoyed our times together. But Eli has also added great value to my life, because he's a person. And I would describe him as an explorer. and he explores things deeply. And he has the added benefit of being a geek, but being a geek who has good communication skills. And that doesn't always go together. So, Eli, as he said, hinted about himself earlier, it's very true. He has that ability to get deep into very technical subjects, very complicated subjects, and then turn around and explain them and engage about them in ways that people understand and they connect with. They may not always agree with him, but they come away, if they're at all open-minded, to relate to our topic today, they come away with an understanding they didn't have before, and I always gain that from conversations with Eli. And finally, since I mentioned the topic, I wanted Eli to be my sidekick for this because almost more than anyone else I can think of in the Google Plus world, he exhibits that quality to me of what I think we're going to explore more deeply in the next hour about what open-mindedness really is, its true value. I think of that with Eli. So very, very delighted, very glad that he's a part of this today.
All right. So now it's time to move into the show itself. And this week, I'm not clear on who's co-host number one. That's you, Kristen, right, this week? Co-host number one is Kristen, and number two is Gina. They are going to be taking this conversation down the rabbit hole that is going to be past, present, and future of open-mindedness. So join in the conversation in the comments. Love to have you guys all here. And Kristen, take it away.
Okay, I'm so excited to be here. It's so funny that you had that little difficulty figuring out which one is co-host one and co-host two, because I feel the same way towards Gina, that she is just amazing, and I could never, she's just my sidekick, my superhero, everything wrapped in. She's just totally there and awesome. And I feel like, okay, I got to be co-host one because I went in there and I was like, I want to claim this. But I also claimed Gina because I knew how much this would resonate with her, and I really wanted to highlight that. So I just claimed it, and I'm going to let Gina go with the first question.
I just want to mention, I don't know if you can see that I am blushing, but thank you, Kristen. We have a very mutual admiration thing and love going on here, and that's really fun. My first question for Mark, and for both of you actually, I'm curious if you're aware, do you know when your first awareness or consciousness, kind of your awakening, was? Like a single event or a moment when you first became aware of your own potential for open-mindedness? Like, was there one of those kind of really exciting moments where you could see that something opened up in you and that you were able to actually let go of resistance and the kind of pushback that happens when we're not open-minded?
Wow. I don't think there was any one moment, any epiphany, but I can certainly remember events and circumstances that happened throughout my life that I think led down this path to seeking. And I do want to say, in all honesty, that the quality we're talking about is something I feel very much that I'm still seeking after and have a long, long way to go. But that's okay. I think it's part of being open-minded is realizing that you're on a journey and that you're failing at it constantly. But hopefully you're becoming more and more aware of when you are not doing that, not exemplifying it, and more self-aware so that you can correct it and move on. But to answer your question, gosh, I think it goes back at least as far as school, and I think particularly in high school, having, being a very insecure adolescent and unsure of my identity and who I was in the world, and having the great fortune to have several amazing teachers who began to teach me the skill of questioning things. And it was a skill that wouldn't be fully developed for many, many years to come. But you know, I think one of the attributes that they instilled in me was what I call healthy skepticism, which I think is a part of open-mindedness. You know, I think open-mindedness is a better way to express it, maybe because it's more positive, and people take skepticism as a negative thing, which I don't think it is, but it fortunately has that connotation. But to learn to ask questions, and even of myself, and then, you know, just for the sake of brevity, I mean, there's a lot of things along the way, along the journey that I could talk about, but I think particularly in the last 5-6 years, and this will stray into a topic that we discussed beforehand, whether or not we were going to bring up. But you know, I was a very religious person for most of my adult life, and I'm in the traditional sense of religion. Very involved. It was very much at the center of my life, and as a lot of people in the audience might know, you know, about 10 years ago, I went to seminary, and I did that. I call it my midlife crisis. I did that to challenge myself with some serious questions and say, I have some questions, and are there answers for this? And in the end, I came out without that religious faith that I had gone in with, with questions. But I think as a more developed individual, because that was for me a big barrier in crossing over to say, do I have the courage to ask hard questions and to face up where they might lead me, no matter where they might lead me? So I'll leave it at that for right now. That'll probably open up more questions, but those are a couple of things along the way that led me in this direction.
Yeah, I really like where you took that too, because that, in so many ways, that's what open-mindedness comes down to. It's our fear to let go of the expectations that we have in our own thinking and our own kind of emotional and feeling life and self and systems. So that was an incredible journey for you to have done that and to have been courageous enough to get there and to not be afraid of it once you arrived with that notion. So I'm really impressed by that, and really even more curious. You know, the curiosity keeps building because you've been very open about that experience, and so I've been reading the things that you've written about it over time, and that is one of the things that I wanted to ask you about. And thank you. Thanks a lot. Kristen or Eli?
Yeah, sorry.
Hello.
I would like the same question, well, similar question in the same vein to Eli. Was there a particular event or situation that kind of, you know, opened yourself up to this?
Life. My whole life has been one giant epiphany practically from the start. Yeah, I suppose one reason for that was that I had a sibling, my oldest sister, she was dying. She was born with a defect of the heart, and we knew it was known from when she was a very young age that, barring some miraculous medical breakthrough, she was going to die. You just didn't know when, you know, how fast, how slow, how long would they be able to push it back, how many years could even the most miraculous of best cases have bought her. When you live like that, I mean, life is just different from the start, and so you never have the luxury of thinking that you're the same as other people, and that in and of itself, you know, makes you wonder how much else is there, you know, because when I talk to most other people and I tell them about my life, it just sounds weird to them. They say, oh, I couldn't imagine what it'd be like. How many other things are there that they couldn't imagine that I currently can't imagine? So I think right from the start, you know, I was left with a tremendous open-mindedness, in that regard, and I'm also, I believe, just predisposed by my nature to be somebody whose inner world, his inner thoughts and feelings, have a particularly strong influence on the way that I think and I act at all times. If I'm going to get geeky, there's actually a scale called transliminality used in some psychology studies that's sort of about how, essentially, how real, how powerful the contents of your inner world are in your conscious life, and I score very, very high on that scale.
How old did you say that she was, like, in relation to you?
Well, she was 9 years older than me, and she ended up, in case you're curious, she lived till the age of 25, which was much longer than had been expected, actually.
Wow. So in a way, did you ever kind of feel like you were the little older brother because you knew about this limitation of hers?
No, and if I had for a moment allowed myself to think that, she would have kicked my butt.
Awesome.
And that's not it. That's not a joke. She really would have.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, Gina and I last night went over, like, we're like, okay, so because of the nature of the show, it's very business oriented. Are we going to have, like, audience people that are going to be wanting, like, tips just on business? And I was like, you know what? I think we already set the precedent on Monday for, we're going to be talking about, like, who are these men who have built, you know, what they've built. And it just, thank you so much for being vulnerable and open to sharing, you know, what has really made you. You can't get any deeper than your family, right?
Right.
Also, I once built Hobbiton out of Legos.
That's awesome.
You know, that's just, in one answer to one question, Eli has won the show twice already. You know, so just give up. Between his
It is a contest.
My life is one giant epiphany, which I love. I think is the quote of the show. And now, you know, having built Hobbiton out of Legos, I don't know where else we can go. I think
we're done.
Drops, Mike.
Amongst yourselves. It is really interesting, though, how hardship and big things really open our minds. They transform us into being able to question and being able to hear other people more. Because it also does come back down to being able to hear what someone is saying. And when we're not open-minded, we only hear our own conversation, our internal conversation. We don't hear what's happening or take in what's happening in the environment.
That's such a great point. You know, when people, you know, hear your story, well, I'll just speak for myself. When people hear my story, it's like they always want to be like, I'm so sorry. How did you get through that? And I'm like, I'm blessed to have gone through it because it gives me greater compassion for others.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that is so key to what we're talking about here, because it was a great opening question, Gina, about, you know, the experiences that led us down this direction and made us who we are today. And it's a mysterious thing about tragedies or difficulties that come up. You know, we've all had them. You know, thankfully, other than, you know, the passing of my mother a few years ago, you know, I haven't had a lot of experiences like what Eli had, but I've certainly had failures. I've been fired from jobs. You know, I've been wondering where the next rent check's going to come from. You know, those kinds of, you know, experiences in life, other types of hardships or tragedies, and the mysterious thing is, you know, you see people that have those happen and they just ruin them, and or their life becomes about that from that point on, just that dwelling in that the unfairness or the tragedy or whatever it is. And then other people gain from those experiences, gain wisdom, and become different and become more, particularly the value I think we just shared was empathetic. And by the way, I just want to throw in at this point that you brought up a moment ago about, you know, worrying, being concerned if this is going to have any business value for people. I hope that people who are listening in realize how core this is to what Eli and I do, and really everybody who's in this chat does for business. It is not separate. It's not just, oh, that's nice, that's who you are as a human being, but what about how do I get more followers on Twitter? But the ability to be empathetic, the ability to be open-minded in the best possible way, and I think we still need to kind of get to a definition of that maybe, that these things, I think both Eli and I would strongly agree, are not just nice add-ons, but they are key and at the core of whatever success that we've had and how we do our business and everything. So, maybe we can explore the connections to that a little bit more, but I just want to throw that in, that this is, if anybody's listening in hoping to get good business advice, stay tuned. You are, believe me. Oh, I think you're muted, Gina.
Oops, that's exactly what's happening. We are giving good business advice. Yeah.
I watched your show yesterday, Mark, with, I'm going to butcher their name, so I'll just let you say it when you come in a sec. But, like, everything that you were saying yesterday, like, I was just like, oh my gosh, we totally need to bring that up tomorrow. Like, just being yourself. That was, like, your core message, I think, was just be yourself. And your audience is going to come. There are people out there that are going to resonate with you. So just be yourself.
That was an interview I did for a business called Craft Beverage Jobs. It's a niche site that is helping people to connect in the incredibly growing craft beverage industry. Connect obviously people that are looking for jobs in that industry with the people that need people in it. But it was just a quick 30-minute hangout. We were talking about the topic was do small businesses need a blog? But we ended up exploring the whole idea of content for a small business. And I think what you're referring to is, at one point I got pretty excited in the show because they're talking about in that industry. I'm somebody who has some connections in that industry, and I love it. I'm a craft beer guy. I love good coffee, those kinds of things. So I appreciate what goes into that industry. Without exception, the people who are successful in it, whom I've met, are incredibly passionate about what they're doing. I mean, there's no way that what they're doing is just a business that they said, like, I guess we need another craft beer, so we'll invent one. It's something that that's coming out of, they've turned a hobby into a business, a passion into a business. And what I was saying was, if you're going to blog or do videos or whatever kind of content you're going to do, the best thing you can do is bring that same passion that you have. When I go into your brew pub and I'm talking with you across the bar and I say, so how'd you get into this? And I see their eyes light up and it's like, oh man, I was doing this home brew and this thing happened and I discovered it's like nobody has a taste like this and this needs to be out there. Bring that across in your content. Just let that shine. That reality. So that, I think, just to explain what you were referring to, I think that's the essence of it.
Yeah, perfectly. And that makes me think about the present, like how we presently use that being that open, vulnerable self to bring the best of what we have into our business and what we're able to give to others. So do you feel that you are that you let yourself be vulnerable and that you let yourself be open to that? We see you struggle, not struggle. We see you work through things. You're very open with your process of moving from one thought to the next, and that has just always struck me as something that I just really have been just so impressed, and that makes you stand above the crowd to me. So let me get back to my question. How do you use that? Do you feel that you are effective with using your vulnerability to be able to help others, and turn that into whatever fascinating question you can?
Well, I think that it connects. You just mentioned at the end of that question with helping others, and one of the core values that both Eli and I have had in everything that we do online, especially, is helping others and genuinely helping others, and that's a concept that some people have a hard time with, because what we're talking about with helping others, especially because we're in knowledge-based businesses, that means giving away some of your knowledge for free, which, there's a lot of resistance that comes up when you talk about that, because that's our product. I mean, it's the only product I have is knowledge. I can't say I'm going to give you some knowledge for free, and then here's my my handcrafted glass that I'm going to offer you for $9.95. I've given you something that I normally charge people for. So why would I do that? Well, it's the only way that, on the practical side, it's the only way that we can demonstrate that we're worth listening to at all. It just doesn't work in a knowledge-based world to say, trust me, I know my stuff. Now come up, and sign a $10,000 a month contract, and you'll find out that I know my stuff. You got to put it out there. You got to show it. But let's bring it back and relate it to what you were talking about in terms of the values of empathy and vulnerability and those kinds of things. Because I think it's not enough, and this is what I didn't see, even though I was maybe doing it, I didn't see it until more recently. When I used to talk about this, I would just talk about the being helpful side. Decide how much information you can put out there, put it out, share it freely with people, jump into conversations and say, hey, I've got information on that, or I've got an answer to that, or I've got some insight, or I've got some data, whatever it is. But there's more to it. It's most effective when you connect that with the vulnerability, in terms of going into a dialogue and being willing to see it as a dialogue. So I'm not just jumping into the conversation as, well, the expert's here now. I will answer the question, and you will all be so happy and satisfied, and then I will, drop the mic, as we've said 3 times already, and walk away. But rather, it's much more effective when you come in and say, hey, I think I've got this thing I found. What do you think about it? And you come in with that attitude of, now I'm going to listen. Because there's always the possibility, and frequently is true, that there is at least somebody in the room who's smarter than you are, or who sees another side that you haven't seen. And so it becomes not only a sharing opportunity, an opportunity to show off my expertise and all that, but it becomes an opportunity to learn. And that is a core value of this open-mindedness. A sub-value is that deep desire to learn, and keeping that at the forefront and being conscious about that. You've got to be conscious, because everything in your ego is going to fight against it. So come into the conversation and say, like, I think I'm bringing the bomb here, and everybody's going to just be wowed by what I have to say. But if I really want to connect, I want people to connect with me, and I want to come away with some value in this, I put my thing out there, and now I have to be willing to listen. And that relates back just quickly to my introduction to Eli. That was why I connected so quickly with Eli, because he was a person who brought me that kind of value. I'd come in and say, hey, what about this? I saw this thing with that. And I could count on Eli, if he saw anything contrary, or if he saw anything like more than I was seeing, or more often not, just had a great question that I hadn't considered, that he would bring that in the right way, and that I was going to come out richer than I was. So that's, yeah.
I'd love to drill down on something that you said, if you're willing. When you come to a post, either that you've written or someone else has written, and you're aware that there's someone in the room who knows more than you do, or you're working at staying open, I'm really curious about your internal process. What do you do in those instances? I know it happens to all of us, where even though you have those best intentions, you feel that resistance, and we have to break through it. So I'm just really curious about some of the details of kind of what's your inner conversation. How do you, that's kind of a practical question, like how do you get yourself through that to the point of actually being able to hear?
Boy, I mean, that's something that I'm consciously working on right now.
That's why I'm asking you.
Aware of that. I'll relate this back to if people scroll down the comments on the event page in Google Plus for this. I posted earlier a couple of posts that I said I might bring up during a time, and one of them is a post called "Religion for the Non-Religious," And for the moment, even though we brought up religion earlier, put aside the religious aspects of that content. What fascinated me there was the gist of the post is really about becoming more self-aware and aware of the weaknesses, aware of the parts of your mind that that fight against what we're talking, the values that we're talking about here, that fight against vulnerability, that fight against empathy. The more aware you are of those, you can see them. You can begin to train yourself to, that's it. That thing is rising. I feel it rising up, and when I feel it rising up, I can conquer it. I can deal with it. So here's where the real vulnerability comes in the situation that you've posed. You go in. I feel this every time I create a piece of content, especially if it's something that I'm trying to do. Expert level content. I'm trying to really show off, I know something here. I've seen something. I got this piece of data, and I want to share it with you. There's immediately voices screaming in my head that there's going to be smart people out there that are going to find the holes in this. You've missed something, you misinterpreted something, you did it, and those voices can keep you from ever putting that out there. But if you recognize that and you realize, no, I want those smart people, the better part of your mind comes in and says, that's a benefit, that's a good thing, if they find a hole in this, that's good for me, it's good for my clients, it's good for my business, because I'm going to learn from it. So, long answer to say, I think, I don't know fully what the process is, other than trying to be more conscious, self-conscious of those voices and where they're really coming from and what they're really saying. And then you can, once it's the old thing, once you've identified a fear or you've identified a boogeyman, you can deal with it and turn it to something good instead of something destructive.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It's like naming. Once you name something, it normalizes it and it kind of brings it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I personally find it helpful to make yourself read, look at things that are contrary to what you currently think about something, and try, if you can, to find one thing you like or agree, even in something that otherwise just you disagree with so much it makes you your blood want to boil. Because if you can find that one thing, then you can start from some common basis, and if two people can start from there, their odds of finding some kind of agreement are much greater. Now, I'm not going to say I always succeed at trying to do this. That's why it's called trying. Unfortunately, there's another meaning of the word trying, and that is what sometimes feels people are doing to me. And I don't always handle that, perhaps with all the Buddhist aplomb I imagine I will when it's not actually happening in my head. Because in my head I'm always going, your negativity has no effect on me. I am zen to the center of my soul. And that's not true as often as I'd like it to be.
But
there's a vulnerability to what we're doing, even coming on this show for this topic. When you first brought it up, I was like, oh no. It's like, as soon as you say yes, I am the example of open-mindedness. And all I can think about, all that was screaming in my brain for the past week and a half, is all of the threads that are out there right now on Google Plus and Twitter and Facebook that people could dig up and find, or there may be people in the audience that say, where I was less than, open-mindedness was the last thing that was happening.
Well, that's the thing, Mark.
When they told us it was all going to go on our permanent record in school, they didn't really, I didn't think they meant,
Right. But Mark, that makes you a perfect person to be here, because somebody to whom open-mindedness comes easily. I do think some people are just born with that ability to see all sides and to not get boiled up and whatever. But to witness and be privileged enough to go through the process of somebody being aware of their own resistances and their own ability to react, and then move towards more open-mindedness in various situations is perfect. I mean, that's our best teacher, really, when we get to see the whole spectrum of behavior and thought. And you know, there are plenty of people in my life who are always smiling. I mean, I live in Santa Barbara, okay? You know, there are people who are always smiling, always zen, always yogic, all that stuff, you know, just so squeaky clean in terms of their range of emotion, and you never really believe it. But when somebody is willing and does actually have that range, then it becomes real for all of us, and we all have the opportunity to learn from it. So every one of those examples that I've witnessed, I've been looking in myself to see where my own open-mindedness stands. So I think of you as a teacher in that light, and sometimes our teachers are the ones who are the best mirrors for ourselves. So.
Well, I want to quickly bring in something here that I think is important to me to get into this discussion, and it relates here, is that you know, a joke about people can find examples. They go out there and find them. They're there. There's one from today. You know, sort of right. You know, got into a real argument with somebody, and I don't think I was mean or nasty. I hope I wasn't, but I was blunt, because I'll use this particular case. In this particular case, is a person who has time and again. And I'll talk about this. Eli is going to know who I'm talking about. Just been, you know, incredibly frustrating to me because it seems like a wall. You know, it's like he's got certain, you know, except 2 or 3 like key ideas ideas that he's just convinced are right, and he hammers away at them, and it doesn't seem to matter any evidence that you bring up or whatever, you know, anybody else is saying. And so the thing that I wanted to bring in here is that open-mindedness does not mean, you know, whatever. Everything is, you know, it's all the same. All ideas are equal. Everything. There's the other link that I put in the show comments, in the event comments, was to a post about something called the balance fallacy. And the balance fallacy, and you see this on the news media all the time, is the fallacy that all ideas are on an equal footing and all ideas are worthy of equal time. And so, you know, sometimes on a news broadcast, they'll be talking about an issue, and it's an issue that is pretty well settled, whether it's in the area of science or, you know, politics, wherever it might be. It's, you know, the evidence is in on this thing, and it's real settled. But there's always going to be people out there. It's a big world with, you know, the World Wide Web now. There's always, you can find anybody. You can find people that believe the Earth is flat still. Okay, so this would be maybe a good example that won't be too controversial for people listening. Say, like, you know, I think it's pretty well settled that the Earth is a sphere. But, you know, the idea of the balance fallacy would be like, we're going to have somebody on talking about cosmology, so we've got to have somebody from the Flat Earth Society, you know, to come in and balance that out. So all that to say that, you know, to me, open-mindedness doesn't mean empty-mindedness. At the end of the day, you have to make some critical evaluations. You have to decide what you believe. And for me, now, belief is not faith. Belief is a warranted step forward based on enough evidence to satisfy me. And when I get to that point, that doesn't mean that it can never be questioned again. That comes back to what we were talking about before, about being open to people questioning. But at a certain point, when somebody is just entering into a discussion and they're trolling, you know, all they're doing is bringing up the contrary just to be contrary, or they're just, you know, they're not getting it. That's not adding value. And so I do want to bring in that, you know, that contrast to the idea of open-mindedness.
Yeah, it's interesting. I came upon a really great quote from Simon Sinek yesterday when I was doing my little digging, and it's just a few sentences. One of the best paradoxes of leadership is a leader's need to be both stubborn and open-minded. A leader must insist on sticking to the vision and stay on course to the destination, but he must be open-minded during the process. And I really like that duality, that it goes to what you're saying too, where it's not that in order to be open-minded, you have to be swayed or kind of move over to the other person's perspective. It's more about being open to hearing what that perspective is and then weighing it in with your own ideas, and so that there can actually be discourse. And that kind of goes back to what Eli was saying about commonality, finding commonality so that you're able to hear each other. And I love that article, that balance fallacy thing that you brought in. And it's almost kind of like a koan where when you first read it, it's like you get a little bit displaced. It's a little bit confusing. And I like that about it. Everyone is muted.
Just to go back to, I like to say it as regards the balance between open-mindedness and the need to nonetheless be able to reject ideas that are wrong, is that you don't want to be so open-minded that your brain falls out, but you also don't want to be so closed-minded that it suffocates. It's not open-mindedness.
I was saying, that's what I was looking for. You just said it. I was trying to think of that quote and I couldn't think of it.
Yeah. Or perhaps more to the point is, I think that at some point, obviously it's easy to get frustrated with people who are refusing to accept something because it's not of consequence at that moment. When it may actually be of consequence to somebody else or at some other moment to be right about this. So, okay, it's harmless for you right now to debate whether or not you have the ability to breathe underwater. You continue to debate this idea when you are thrown off the ship, you are probably going to drown. So, open-mindedness, good. Too open-minded, you're risking suffocating because you think you have gills like a fish.
Yeah, I think very simply that the better definition of open-mindedness than the way that, unfortunately, that's why I cringed when I first heard the topic, because I think too many people think that means just being open to any or accepting everything as equal. The better definition to open-mindedness is being always open to the possibility that you could be wrong. And that's what I call healthy skepticism. That's what it really is. It's ultimately skepticism toward yourself, not cynicism. I think that's where we really need to draw the line. Cynicism is unhealthy. Cynicism is just when you preemptively adopt a negative attitude. You go in with assuming the worst, or assuming that this can't be right, or other people can't be right. Skepticism is the willingness to question, and first, above all, question yourself and question your own beliefs, your own assumptions, and that's what I think true open-mindedness is.
It seems like when you're in that state, then you have so much less stress because you don't have a barrier up that you're constantly fighting to keep up, because it takes a lot to hold on to morals, ideals, whatnot, if you're not willing to allow yourself to be challenged or challenge yourself. I really like that.
That is such a brilliant point, Kristen. It takes energy to not be open-minded. It's actually more relaxing and more healthy to be open.
Yeah, it's like you can let everything breathe in and out. It ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Hold on loosely, but don't let go.
Yeah, you don't want to let go of reality.
Now we have our earworm of the day. Thanks a lot.
I would love to talk more about that dialogue thing that you were talking about. What happens when you do get into a dialogue with someone and you find that they are not quite as open-minded and they're just digging in their heels? Like, is there, especially with business and when it's all open in front of everybody, are there some like techniques or I don't want to say tactics, but are there like some strategies to overcome that?
Well, if we want to be vulnerable here, it's a good thing you brought that up because I feel like this is my weakest area. I've joked with Eli about this before and other people, that my favorite, if I had to pick the one favorite comic panel of all time, there's no doubt about it. I go right to it. It's the brilliant XKCD. And years ago, he did this one-panel comic. If you don't know XKCD, he just does very simple stick figure drawings, but they're very profound. And he has a stick figure guy sitting at a computer, and he's typing away, and this off-panel voice, is coming in saying like, honey, come to bed. And he's saying like, I can't. Someone's wrong on the internet. And that, that is me. I get that. Somebody's wrong on the internet, and I think where I fail the most at this is getting into those. I alluded to. I did it today. I did it just like an hour ago. Got into once again this argument with a guy who I know is unfortunately, he's a nice guy otherwise. He's not a bad human being. He just has this brick wall in his head about certain things. And I've slammed up against that brick wall for 3 years now, and I keep going back, and I forget the bruises, and I do it again. So I think where I want to get to with that, and I see other people whom I admire who do this well, is you say your piece, you have it, when you realize when it's gotten to the point where the other person is no longer listening but just repeating their talking points or whatever it is, the thing that's going to frustrate you. That's the point that you have the courage and the ability and the self-awareness to say, thanks very much, appreciate your contributions, obviously we disagree, and you move on. And I'm not there yet. I'm not always able to let that go, and that's something that, at least I'm aware of it as we've been talking about, so it's the next thing to work on.
My personal favorite strategy is to destroy them and eat their soul, but I'm starting to think I might need to develop a broader range of responses, because the soul-eating thing, it's starting to get acid from some of these souls.
I love how it comes through that Max voice too.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
It sounded extra scary.
Yeah, totally.
You don't want to mess with Eli because he turns into Max Headroom and then it's over. He sucks you into his virtual world and you'll never get out.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. Sorry, getting it off the fun stuff here. Back to seriousness. One of my questions had been, what was an instance in which you failed to be open-minded? And I was curious, and that was perfect because just an hour ago. And isn't that amazing? It's a practice, and we just keep practicing and practicing. And those of us who care about open-mindedness will probably never reach that place that we're hoping to get to, but that's perfect because it keeps us trying.
Yeah. And I think the other, just to quickly answer that, the other area is, and I alluded to this earlier, is succumbing, and it still happens occasionally. I think it happens less, but it still happens. Succumbing to that ego fear of being found out. There's something that I wish I remember who, but somebody on Google Plus brought up to me a while ago that there's something that's talked about in the psychology world called the imposter syndrome. And the imposter syndrome is not that you really are an imposter, but and apparently it afflicts like almost anybody who puts themselves out there as any kind of authority or expert or whatever, that you always know what you don't know, or you're afraid of what you don't know. And there's that fear of being found out, of being the imposter. And so there still are times when I put something out there and somebody comes in and offers a contradictory view or brings up a piece of data I didn't see, or whatever, and that fear rises up. And I get self-defensive, and that's one of those voices that we're talking about that still can get to me. And again, just like the other one, the good thing is I'm becoming more aware of it, so I can recognize it and say, name it, identify it, stomp it down, and get back to that better self, which is the one that wants to learn, the one that wants to grow, the one that puts information out there, partly for the purpose of finding out what I don't know.
I just want to put out there too that beautiful things can come out of the process of like almost like forcing yourself to take a look at what someone else is saying. And I watched that with you and Vin, and I cannot think about a conversation about open-mindedness and not bring up Vin, because that was like the most beautiful exchange that I watched. I think that it's so memorable to me to have been there at the beginning of the conversation, and just like everybody was being ridiculous and dorks and just and then like what came out of it, like friendship, because you were willing to open yourself up to the possibility.
Well, I think you mentioned the person that Kristen's referring to is Vincent Messina, who has become he's like another Eli in my life. He's become a very valuable friend and ally. But Vincent is a bulldog. I mean, he and people easily misunderstand where he's coming from, because when he sees something and he's skeptical about it, he will go after it and be tenacious. He doesn't, the bulldog isn't, he's got the hold of the pants leg and he's not going to let go. But if you've done this and you just related it, those of us who waited it out, stayed with him, you realize after a while, like, he's not mad at you, and he's not on an ego trip, and he's not a troll, but he's passionately after the truth. And if you hang with him, you're going to get somewhere. You're going to learn something. You're going to be moved by something. I just got to tell a quick Vincent Messina story. The first when I first kind of butted heads with him online, and then found out that he lives just a few miles from Stone Temple's headquarters up in Massachusetts, where I go up once a month and spend time there. He said, hey, let's get together for a beer, which we did, which turned into about 3 beers in about 3 hours. But he came in, and I said, I think I see something about you. I think you've got some stuff. And I said, no holds barred, go for it. And for the first hour of that time, he laid into me. And I mean, when I laid into me in a good way, he had a list. He had a bunch of stuff that he thought like I was blind about, that I wasn't seeing, that I was failing at, but he brought it like with such passion and such empathy, and that's what came across when I was face to face with him. And at the end of the time, I was just thanking him over and over and over, and it's literally changed my life. I mean, there are things that came out of that night that changed forever the way that I'm doing things in my business, in my online persona, everything. So, back from my religious days, there's a great saying from the Bible: "Faithful are the wounds of a friend," and that is a very profound statement. The best thing a true friend can do for you is wound you in the right way. Wound you in a way that's meant to make you stronger, that's meant to eventually bring healing. That's a true friend.
Yeah. And Vincent is a very loyal and dear friend. And as he recently pointed out, that there's a fallacy out there about bulldogs, and that according to the American Kennel Club, a bulldog's disposition should be equable and kind, resolute and courageous, not vicious or aggressive, pacific and dignified. And so when we call Vincent a bulldog, it's a high compliment. So,
well, as a family that has in our family a beautiful, beautiful rescued pit bull, I can share in those horrible misconceptions about certain animals.
Pit bulls I love pit bulls.
Best dog we've ever had. Best family dog.
I'm a cat person. I just go up in the trees when they're barking and wait for them to calm down.
Okay, I hate to jump in here. I've been quiet this whole time.
Boo, Dennis, boo!
No way! You're going to ruin the party. I've been quiet. This has been an amazing conversation, and sometimes you just don't have anything to make it better. And that was the case today. I have absolutely loved everything that's been said, and many of the comments. Jason Weiser has come up with some great comments during this. So, unfortunately, it's time for closing thoughts. And the other last thing that we do, end of every show, and now I forgot what we call it, Kristen.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, we kept changing what it's called. That's partly why.
Shameless self-promotion.
Shameless self-promotion. That's what it is. Yes, and I'm supposed to look just through one eye. So we're going to do closing thoughts. The order is Eli, then Gina, then Kristen, and then Mark. And then we will do shameless self-promotion in the same order. Eli, take it away.
I'd like to thank you, Dennis, and everybody else. It's been a great show. I'm Eli Fennell, internet marketer, and I am keeping my mind open.
Gina.
Oh, are we doing closing statements or
Yes,
shamelessness? Both?
Closing statements. Then we'll do shameless self-promotion.
Okay. Yeah, this has been an incredible conversation, and my mind is just going wild with lots of thoughts and ideas, and I think we could probably talk for a few more hours. One word that we did not really use in this show, I don't think, unless it slipped by me, was communication. And Alex is out there kind of screaming, because really so much of this comes down to how do we communicate with each other, and are we willing to listen, and are we willing to shape our communication in a way that somebody else is actually able to understand what we're saying. So it's a two-way street, being open-minded, and we're all kind of playing a role in that, and we can all really help each other to be open-minded. It's not that somebody is or isn't. If we come up against that barrier with someone and we feel or we sense that they're not being open-minded, we can actually help them to become more open-minded in the conversation. So it's on all of us all the time, and that's not a bad thing. I think it's a really good thing. I think it gives us that opportunity to practice, which is something I mentioned earlier. So that's my closing statement. Thanks, you guys. Great conversation.
Okay, yeah. I love your use of the word practice, because it is a practice, isn't it? We have to constantly be vigilant and make sure that we are doing our practice to stay open-minded, to learn to be open-minded, and allow those conversations to flow.
Mark.
Yes, that leads to me. One of the most influential books that I've ever read, this was Gideon Rosenblatt turned me on to this, is a book called Finite versus Infinite Games by a guy named James P. Carse. It was written, I think, back in the 70s, but it's still in print and deserves to be. And just very quickly, the whole concept that comes out of game theory, social theory, but he contrasts that there's basically everything in life is a game, and there's two kinds of games. A finite game is one where the object is to win. It has an ending. It's going to end. We know who the players are. Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to lose. An infinite game is a game that's about the game. It's about the winning is keeping the game going. And what I want to say, and just in closing, is that that's what we need to move toward, is finding how to be players of the infinite game, where when you enter into a conversation, you find a way that your goal is not the finite game of I want to win, I want to be the one who had the best answer, and everybody goes away in awe of me, but how can I contribute to this conversation in a way that will keep the game going? Because the longer the game goes, the more we all benefit, the more we all learn. I don't want to shut it down. That's something I'm still striving toward, but that would be my closing thought. Be players in the infinite game.
Wow, that's, I like what you're saying there, Mark. It made me think that to really balance this open-mindedness, there's a huge need for humility. Um, yeah, that's going to be at the core of making this happen. And so I want to throw this up too. This is my favorite quote or favorite comment. Jason says, "Yes, Gina Fidel, open-mindedness does not mean that you need to compromise that which you hold true, just that you are willing to listen to others' ideas." And if that isn't the consensus of this whole show today, I'm not sure we could come closer to the center of everything that we were talking about. So there's my closing thoughts. It's now time for shameless self-promotion. So everybody gets a chance to sell, promote, share anything you've got. It's your time. Eli, what do you got?
Well, my services are available for SEO, social media, content writing, and various other aspects of internet marketing. So, if you're interested, get in contact with me through my Gmail account or through Google+, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, for that matter. I pay attention to all of them, so there's plenty of places to find me online, and I'd love to discuss, with anybody out there, what their needs are and what, if anything, that I could help you with in terms of strategy and implementing strategy for your marketing. So,
Gina.
Well, I'm the co-owner of Fat Eyes Web Development with my husband in Santa Barbara, California, and my home away from home is Google+, so you can find me there, and I do write the blog on our business website, and I would love it if you would put me in your circles and check out some of my articles and have a conversation with me. Thanks.
Kristen.
Okay, I just have to say that Eli's on Swarm also. That's where I think we kind of connected back when I was Foursquare.
I am on Swarm. But I'm very picky about who I let follow me on there because, worried about people stalking my entire I probably should have been worried about that before I friended you, but, too late now.
Oh, okay. And Mark is on it too. Just want to say that too. Okay. So my shameless self-promotion. I don't know how selfless or how shameless it is, but I have to give a shout out to Lend One Hand. And Mark is a moderator in our community. Just wanted to bring that up. We're going to be featuring Greg Trujillo and Carolyn Capern pretty soon here. I just had an interview with them talking about what they're doing with Rethink Homelessness and really cool stuff. Eli, you being in Florida, you probably, I don't know, do you know what they're doing with Rethink Homelessness?
Last thing I heard about how we were rethinking homelessness in Florida was we were rethinking their right to eat food, unfortunately.
Yeah, major stuff. All right, so we're going to be featuring them, and so everyone keep your eyes peeled for some really good stuff there. Oh, and also we're going to be having a Codebreakers. We were going to have this last week, and then it didn't wind up working out, but this week we have actually had a team meeting about it, and right before the show I got a yeah, let's do it from Craig. So we're going to be doing our attachment theory Codebreakers show this Saturday, so everyone please come. I'll be putting the event out later today.
All right, I'm going to cheat and do two because my first one is not a self-promotion, but I really want to say this with all my heart, with all sincerity. My business, Stone Temple Consulting, that I'm connected with, we deal with major brands most of our clients are Fortune 500 or above, and it's probably not most of the people in the audience, if anybody. But if you're a smaller business and you need the kinds of things that these people do, these are the people to hire, and I mean that sincerely. You've seen why today. You know, you see they're smart, they know their stuff, they know the technical ends of what they do, but they're also the kind of people that you're going to be able to trust and work with, who are going to do the best for your business. So that's my first. My true self-promotion is I got a new piece of content coming out, and this is the first time I'm announcing it publicly. So this is a challenge to myself to actually do it finally. I've been working on it for a couple of months, and that is coming Monday. I'm going to launch a new daily 3-minute audio file that I'm calling Traphagen's Takeaway, or Traphagen's Takeout, excuse me, Traphagen's Takeout. And it's just going to be something that I've thought of that day, a 3-minute thought. Shamelessly stealing this from Jay Bear, who's doing a great job of it with on video. So just to not be copying him, I'm going to do it audio only. It's going to be on SoundCloud, so you'll be able to subscribe there. SoundCloud files are embeddable and playable in Google Plus posts. I'm going to be posting it in Google Plus first. But be watching for that starting next week. Traphagen's Takeout, just whatever's coming out of my head and coming out of what we're talking about today. I sincerely hope that every one of those will be a dialogue starter, not just me pontificating. So watch for that next Monday.
That sounds exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh God, now I have to do it.
So this week, all I'm going to shamelessly self-promote is Network Roundtable's next week's show. And we're going to do something a little different. It's the last show of the first half of this season. And so here's how it's going to work. We are going to invite people to come in. We're not going to have a superhero and a sidekick this week. You can come join us, and we are going to be talking about respectfulness. So having a open forum where anyone could be in there could really make it an interesting conversation on respectfulness. So that'll be next week, 9:02 Mountain Time in the morning on Friday. And on Monday, we're going to do the Who Are You, and we're going to open that up. Anyone who has been watching Who Are You and thought, I'd really like to do that exercise, the first 2 people that say they want to be on the show, well, you can be on the show. So reach out to us in the comments right here from this event if you want to be on the first 2 people that say they would like to go through the Who Are You exercise. Will be on Monday's show. All right, so that's it for this week. Thank you everyone so much for joining us for Network Roundtable, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks for watching Network Roundtable this week. I hope you were inspired to pump a little harder. Take the time to subscribe to our YouTube channel and join us here on Google Plus as we continue to talk about core values. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next week.